estimated annual financing gap that developing countries need to bridge that gap to finance the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, development aid is shrinking, and fast at that. It's down already to 12% as of last year. Now let that sink in for a moment. $4 trillion is needed, and less money is coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we are gathered here today. Because doing things the way we've done them before simply won't cut it. Good morning. Karibuni, welcome. My name is Charlotte Ochieng, and this is the roundtable discussion hosted by the AECF and KfW. Before we begin, I'd like to share with you a few housekeeping tips. I'll be your MC for the day. Tip number 1, please keep your phones on silent mode. Thank you. Unless it's an investor calling you with $4 trillion, then by all means, pick it up and share the good news with us. Tip number 2, the restrooms are to my right, which is to your left, and we'll have a networking event right at the end. And most importantly, you are the most important person today. We want to hear your insights, we want to get your questions, so keep them ready, and we'll note down all your perspectives. That's okay? Great. With that closed, I want us to shift gears a little bit and level up the conversation. I'd like to invite to the stage farmer number 1, a crop whisperer, the economic champion of grassroots farmers across sub-Saharan Africa. Help me welcome Fred Keel, Head of Agribusiness at AECF. A round of applause, please. Until he gets here.
Thank you very much. Charlotte, yes, proud farmer number 1, and looking forward to see how the conversations pan out today. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure to invite you to welcome you to today's session, which is themed Doing More for Less, Mobilizing Private Sector Capital for Sustainable Development Impact. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Without you being here today, the room will be empty, and I'm sure the outcomes that we are looking out today will not be achieved. So we're really grateful. As we all know, traditional aid is contracting today faster than expected. We also do know that the challenges that Africans are facing, or the grassroots communities are facing, continue to grow. And we must confront this reality together, seize the opportunity, and look at creative ways of ensuring that we continue driving sustainable development as we all envision to achieve. At the AECF, we do believe strongly in the power of private sector, particularly the small businesses and growing businesses when it comes to catalyzing and driving sustainable economic development in Africa. We do know that it is these businesses that understand the communities that we seek to serve together. They are innovative, and they are the cornerstone of creating sustainable opportunities. Today, in this room, we are gathered funders, we have financial institutions, We do have the guys who go to the ground to do implementation. We also have representation of the private sector. So we do look forward to the insights that will be coming out of the session. And together with our partner, KfW, we are looking forward to creating a new pathway that is going to look at the challenges and the opportunities that we face together and come up with lasting solutions. With this in mind, I would like to now invite the head of Development Cooperation at the German Embassy, Ms. Aline Khan, to give opening remarks. Let's all of us open our hearts, our thoughts, and have a great day, and looking forward for the insights that we generate together. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Habari asubuhi. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for AECF and KfW for inviting me. Since my name is nowhere up there, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Alena Kern. I work at the German Embassy here in Nairobi. I wear many hats. I'm the head of cooperation for Sudan. I'm currently also the head of cooperation for Kenya, and I used to be the head of cooperation for Somalia. So I believe I have a quite extensive outlook on the region, and I'm also very happy to say that the German government as a whole and the German Development Cooperation works very closely with KfW, of course, because they're one of our main implementing partners, but also with the AECF. And we have this long-standing and good cooperation, and I think it's a nice opportunity to be here today and discuss with you, Victoria, with you, Henrique, but also with our partners from different programs about what we do on the ground. I think today is mainly focused on partners that we have in Kenya, but just to mention, we have them actually all over the African continent. I was asked to give a keynote speech. Then I thought, okay, keynote, that sounds like a very long speech to give. I can already tell you it will be short. It will be more like opening words. Actually, it will be opening questions, because I studied the concept note for today's event, like I guess every one of you also did. And for me, at least, it provoked some questions, some thoughts about the development cooperation sector more broadly and our priorities. This is an event about the power, the impact of the private sector, and yet I am a representative of the public sector, speaking to you today, a donor, actually a very classical donor. German Development Cooperation has been around for more than 60 years, so why I am on stage when we're talking about innovation. When I read through the concept notes, I read a lot of accuses, a lot of things that donors seem to be doing wrong. Donors are cutting funds, that's true. Donors are not seeking the full potential or are not seeing the full potential of the private sector. Interesting point. Donors are not taking national interests and national strategies into account to the level that is needed. Also an interesting point. Let's discuss that. I'm here to acknowledge that there is a need to talk and also to hear your perspectives, and yeah, please be open to criticize me. I also want to really hear from the hands-on experience of our partners. When I read through the concept note, it mentioned a number of specific innovative financing mechanisms or instruments. It mentioned challenge funds, performance-based financing, blended financing, social impact bonds. And although I have been a head of cooperation for 4 years, I have to admit I've never fully understood those concepts. So also please enlighten me about what that means and why the German government should continue to invest or even further invest into these kind of instruments. I also want to warn you that I don't believe in simple solutions. And when I read through the concept notes, I had sometimes the feeling that, okay, this is preaching very simplistic ideas of how to change development cooperation. For example, the concept mentions that development donors or donors need to invest in high-impact private sector-driven sectors. So I was like, what does that mean? Does it mean that we just stop working with the public sector and give our money only to companies, to the private sector, and they'll fix it for us? And having studied international cooperation for a while and having been in that sector, It actually reminded me of the trickle-down economics from the last century. And I think this really didn't work. So giving money to those who already have capital, to the, let's say, elites in developing countries, and the private sector very often is part of an elite. I have a lot of questions whether that is really the one and only solutions. Here in East Africa, there are countries that really lack basic social sectors, and unfortunately those social sectors are not profitable. So what's the role of a private sector in delivering such basic services such as health, education, water, and so on? I want to hear from our panelists if only investing in the private sector really can fix those problems as well. And then the second example from the concept note, it mentioned that donors should increasingly build on African-led solutions. And of course, on a first look and intuitively, this sounds right. This is also something that the German government has committed to. We want to listen to our African partners, invest in our African partners, and make sure that initiatives are locally led. But then that concept of localization, to me still, again, after 4 years in the job, is a bit vague. What do we do exactly when we invest in African partners and African-led solutions? Do we mean governments? Do we mean the private sector? Do we mean local national NGOs? I also want to understand what exactly is who exactly are the local partners. And then, because I'm German, I need to also mention that the German government still looks at local partners and has questions around compliance. When it looks at the partner governments in this region, we have questions around human rights records, around governance, and these also need to be addressed and need to be explained to the German public, to our voters, to our taxpayers. So yes to African-led solutions, but please enlighten me on the details here. So in closing, I think I'm very curious about today's discussion. I hope my questions can be answered. I haven't talked about German priorities so much, but I want to mention we have a new government since May this year. There's a new Minister of Development Cooperation, and there's new focus areas in our development cooperation, and one of them is the private sector, both the German private sector and then also the private sector in our partner countries. The question that was put in the concept note, doing more with less, it's a valid question also for Germany. And doing more with less with the private sector, that is really, I think, the question we want to address today. And I think it's a very good time to talk about that. Thank you.
A round of applause for Elena, please. She deserves another one. A round of applause, please. And thank you, Elena. Thank you, Fred, too. Elena, I like that you have a lot of questions. And the next part of this discussion is the panel. And I want to believe that those questions are going to be answered, at least some of them. And we'll get to explore how. How do we stay strategic? How do we become adaptive? And how do we reimagine development finance to do more with less? Francis, the floor is yours. Take it away. A round of applause for Francis.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you for the questions, Elena. Welcome to today's panel and roundtable. My task first is to introduce our panelists. We'll have a hybrid engagement. So 3 of the panelists are available here in person, and one of the panelists will be joining us virtually, the reason we have the screens. So, and to our first panelist is the CEO for the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, Victoria Sabula. With over 15 years of experience in impact investing and development finance, Victoria leads an institution that has catalyzed, listen to this, close to $1 billion in matching private sector investment across 26 countries in Africa. How about that? So AECF specializes in deploying blended finance and challenge fund models in fragile, underserved, and high potential markets, particularly in agribusiness, renewable energy, and climate-smart solutions. AECF is widely recognized for its commitment to African-led implementation and measurable impact at scale. A hand of applause for Victoria as she takes the stage. Thank you, Victoria. Our second panelist who is joining us virtually is Elena, a Senior Advisor, Public and Private Partnerships at UNICEF. Elena, if you could put your video on. Yeah, there she is. Welcome, Elena, to the panel. She leads cross-sectoral strategies to drive impactful public-private partnerships. UNICEF, as you would know, is the world's largest provider of humanitarian and development assistance for children and operates in over 190 countries globally. UNICEF has increasingly engaged private sectors in delivering digital learning, clean water, health access, and social protection through market shaping, shared value, and corporate social investment models. So Yelena brings deep insight into how we design PPPs that are not only sustainable, but equitable and locally responsive. Welcome, Yelena. A hand to her as well. Thank you. So the next panelist is Isaiah Mutuma, the founder and the CEO of Lifter Kenya Limited, an AECF-supported enterprise committed to expanding affordable access to clean water and sanitation, again, in underserved communities. Lifter's innovative approach combines low-cost hardware, community-based distribution, and digital payment systems to drive last-mile impact. And Isaiah, who is here with us today in person, brings the critical voice of an entrepreneur navigating the real-world challenges and opportunities of scaling inclusive services through catalytic capital, especially in the northern part of this country. You're welcome, Isaiah. Take a seat and a hand to him as well. Finally, Mr. Eric Shikanda, who is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and also the Chief Operating Officer for the Kenya Bankers Circle, one of the most established and cooperative financial institutions in Kenya's formal sector. As you would know, circles are central to Kenya's financial ecosystem, in this case, in Kenyan context, mobilizing up to $4.6 billion in savings and serving as the primary credit source for SMEs, MSMEs, to some extent, for households in the country. But the Kenya Bankers Circle has positioned itself as a bridge between institutional capital and community enterprise, highlighting the potential for circles to actually act as local implementation partners in inclusive finance, especially in a blended finance environment. A hand to Mr. Eric Shikanda. And I'll be your moderator, Francis Washira. So we'll start off the conversation around user strategic design. And this is really designed for maximum impact. And this question goes to all the panelists, starting with Victoria. From your position and that of your institution, AECF, what must change in how we design development programs to maximize a private sector-led impact? What can you share from what is already shifting?
That works? Yeah, it does. Good morning, everyone, and thank you truly for being here today, and thank you Alena, for what I think are really important points and questions for all of us to ponder on. Francis, you ask about what must change. It's interesting that over the last few days, we have had an opportunity as a team to ask a very interesting question within our own institution, which is, who is that one beneficiary that we are seeking to really transform their lives? Because once we are so clear about the profile of this beneficiary, and we truly understand where they are, what they are looking for, what works for them, and you create something that truly is relevant for them, because this beneficiary often, if you're talking about refugees, they are in the millions. If you're talking about the rural woman entrepreneur, they are in the millions. If you are talking about the Africa's young person, they are in the millions. So as we work in development, are we having such a clarity about the who we are designing for? So I think for me, the clarity that I feel has been coming through in the last few days is the importance of not understanding the solution that you're going to provide, but really understanding the who you are actually targeting with private sector investments. That way you're able to work backward to be able to attend to the job that they will access. You will not be able to shift Africa's young people to all be at the 100% literacy levels. Yet irrespective of who they are and their literacy level, they must access dignified and meaningful employment, which means that we need private sectors that are powered sufficiently to be able to incorporate the young person who is able to come in as a casual laborer, the young person who is accessing digital learning and can be able to come in as that exceptional data analyst, the young person who is so ambitious and wants to be a part of the growth of the business and can come in middle management. It is a whole, it is looking at the young person in their fullness and how they are represented. So that's one. Let's know the person that we are seeking to change. I think the other thing really which we push for at the AECF is we don't design for purposes of deploying grant capital to businesses. For us, it is not access the capital. It is that we are incentivizing you as a private sector to orient your models, to define your model, to serve the rural person, so to serve the low-income household, to catalyze capital into the value chains, into the sectors that we really care for, is something that I feel we've learned and is something that we are being more intentional about. So we, for example, worked with Kenya Bankers Circle over the last few years. They were not in northern Kenya, right? So we incentivized them as a growing business to go into a region that is disadvantaged for the reason of geography, for the reason of displacement, for them to service a refugee community that was not before accessing capital, but with the intention that that forms a part of their strategy, and subsequent to the de-risk investments that is coming from public funders, they will utilize their own capital to grow the business. They are now leveraging a capital of beyond 3 for what we have offered them to be able to scale the very model within that region. And most recently, they are also with us in the fisheries sector and in the Nyanza region, looking to service very specifically the women that are working within the marginalized parts of the blue economy. So what are we saying is, as we think about, yes, development capital is shrinking, we also are saying, but the private sector are smart enough to be able to look at how the financial systems work, and they can be able to fundraise once we have been able to profile and present to them this customer that actually is bankable when a few things are incorporated, including, for example, skills building, financial literacy support. I will not want to say everything that I wanted to say because I think from Alena's point, we need to hear the voice of more people in the room. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And it's already, I mean, there's already impact. Whatever we are discussing is really not theoretical. We actually can see things happening, and thank you for sharing. Isaiah, you are on the ground. What is the ground saying? And really, what is the change that we must do to continue maximizing our private sector-led impact from your perspective?
Thank you for having me here. I think from my perspective, as a founder working in the underserved communities like Turkana, my perspective is that these interventions that we currently are designing need to have commercial viability at the core. By that I mean every program that you're seeing, say the humanitarian sector is running, you'll find an equivalent market-based access program that's running from the business community, providing the same goods as the services. And more often than not, you find the development interventions are usually either short-term, short-lived, and they're always dependent on raising, say, donor interventions year in, year out, right? If you go to a business that's, for instance, running in a remote location in Turkana County, you won't find them planning for 1 year. They have a 5-10-year goal or plan to still be serving that community and to expand it. So the ability to blend these programs is just to ensure that the programs which are coming from the development side are commercially viable, and supporting the entrepreneurs who are already navigating the same markets and providing goods and services in these regions, I think is a very key shift that needs to happen. When we launched our business back in 2020, 2021 in Kakuma town, we, of course, had a plan to be there for the long haul, right? The partnership that we were able to, and the support that we were able to get from AECF allowed us to be able to achieve what we could have achieved in 10 years. We are now, like we are living in our year 10 at year 4. And that's only possible just because we've had these partners who've been able to do the heavy lifting, of course, having screened and scrutinized our business model, everything that we were doing, interventions that we were doing, and actually seeing that this is a commercially viable venture that we are involved in. And I think that's something that can easily be replicated. But also designing this program, co-designing them with entrepreneurs who are already on the, in these markets. I mean, more often than not, you find the private sector has a higher score when it comes to efficient allocation of capital than, say, the governments or the rest of the capital providers. And so the moment you give a businessman a certain amount of funding in whatever form, then there's a higher chance of that capital being allocated more efficiently than if it's coming 100% from any other source of capital. And I think entrepreneurs hold the keys to these more or less long-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's really encouraging to hear that you're already achieving your results, a 10-year plan already being achieved in what we say in our terms, in half the time, really getting to that impact. Just before I come to Eric, Jelena, from your end, what's already shifting? You have great engagements across this region. From your perspective, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can you let me know if you can hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. Proceed.
Excellent. Well, like everyone, good morning to everyone, and really apologies before I start. Just I wish I was with you in the room, but I actually tested positive with COVID, so I don't think it would have been in order for me to be there. And just really from kind of a UN and UNICEF perspective in particular, I think what we are seeing is, especially in working with the private sector, is really that we need to move, and we have seen this through our experiences over the years, to move from transactional to actually transformational partnerships. You know, several of you mentioned in the opening, you know, how important is it? A government? Is it the public sector? Is it the private sector? It takes the whole village to raise a child, as we love to say. And I think it's the same to make really sustainable and transformational solutions. We need to co-create solutions with the private sector so that, you know, business incentives and child rights outcomes work hand in hand. I mean, I'm really giving this as an example from UNICEF perspective. And there are many ingredients for that transformational partnership, and I would just like to highlight a few. One that I mentioned already is really to co-design from the start. You know, often, and I'll be brutal to us in the UN, in the old traditional way, you know, we would develop our programs with the government and we would start implementing, and then only towards the end we would start bringing. This was old way. I've been in the UN system for over 25 years. So we have moved away from that. And we realize really that the private sector must be at the table when we're looking at the problem definition, when we're looking at how do we bring the change and how do we change the problem to a actually solution and strong results. So we need to design together, we need to unlock innovation together, and kind of make solutions that are market ready as well. I think the other important point is really shared value and system changes. And again, going beyond that transactional one-off donations project, so it's great to hear 10-year investments. And we need to embed child rights into business operations and markets. I really, me and my team strongly believe that sustainable private sector impact really depends on not only individual partnership, but also on systematic change that really promotes the ethical and inclusive business across industries. The other thing that we constantly talk about is how can we be more innovative and innovative in the financing, development financing agenda. And I think that this is where private sector has a central role to play. And we need to create structures that attract private sector into the child-focused outcomes. You know, someone else mentioned in the beginning, I think it was Alina, you know, how can we bring governments and everybody to invest more in the social sectors that are usually always overstretched, and we really feel that the private sector has a big role to play. And for example, in our partnership with KfW, actually, we have the Resilience Wash partnership that really kind of supports the refugees in a different way. And we, for example, make sure from the little things that they don't pay more water that host community would pay. You know, we see, for example, in Ethiopia, as part of this initiative, we have women that manage and maintain their water distribution at low cost for communities while they earn their livelihood. And these communities are there, right? Even more than a decade ago, they have been impacted and they know what the draft means for them and as part of the whole. So I think, we have been inspired by, KfW, UNICEF, and UNHCR, which is our agency that deals with refugees, is how we can make sustainable solutions for our communities and countries. And I think that localization aspect I will touch upon in our next round. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have to move from being transactional to transformational, co-design, co-create, and unlock solutions that are market ready. It's interesting that you mentioned that private sector engagement would depend on how can we be actually more innovative by having structures that attract the private sector. So thank you so much for that. And last but not least, the people with the money, Kenya bankers. What can you share from what is already shifting? What are the changes that you can see?
Okay, glad to be here. It's a good opportunity. We are grateful. Personally, I'm grateful. Now, just for a few minutes, just to help us understand how our SACCO work, so that you can appreciate the SACCO, how it operates in the context that you're talking about. Basically, SACCOs came from a situation where we had a big percentage of the population not being able to access funds. They were basically excluded, marginalized. They're not able to access funds. For us who have been in Kenya for quite some time, just like 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't open a bank account in these multinational banks if you did not have a certain level of funds. In fact, you had to be introduced. You had to be introduced by at least two people for you to be able to open, and even to operate. You have to have had a certain level of balance for them to keep you as one of their customers. So with time, there were many people that were not able to get access to funds. They're not be able to plug in the financial world because of their level of income. So what they did, people started coming together and form a union. So the four of us, we sit down together, we bring our money every month, and one person would be able to borrow the money that you contributed, repay it back with interest, and then the other person once they've paid, the other person can be able to take. And the money that I've borrowed, because it is more than the money that I've contributed, we had there's something that came up called guarantorship, so that he stands for me. Should I default, he will be able to pay. Part of my contribution will go, and also his contribution. And that is where the SACCOs came from. And with time, they evolved. They really dealt with the lowest people in the pyramid in terms of economic status, people that were not able to be listened to by the financial institution. So with time, it evolved to quite a number of institutions, and now they were formalized. So when they were formalized, they have regulations. Now that is where the SACCOs came from. So just from that background, we see the SACCOs have maintained most of the time to deal with people that are ordinarily not served by the very formal sectors, formal banking sector. It becomes difficult for a for an individual here in Kenya, the majority actually, going to the bank and getting credit, because the bank will ask of many things that this person would not be able to get. So that is where the SACCOs come in. They were able to understand the context. We have SACCOs that dealt with farmers. Farmers, their income is very uncertain. It's not monthly, monthly income. So that is where it came from. So in terms of how do we design it, how do we design this in the development world, like for us, we have, we need to think out of the ordinary. The ordinary person has a regular income. So how do we support this community? How do we support these individuals that do not have regular income? People that depend on the weather for their income, people that plant crops, fish, as we're talking about. What happens if the fish die? So how are we able to support them? So we have to think out of the ordinary, out of our context, and think within their context. Within their context, what is surrounding them? So how can we be able to help them in their context? The other thing is that we need to slowly move away from just offering grants and support without their involvement. So like for SACCOs, you have to contribute on regular basis. You have to contribute your monthly contribution on regular basis. You have to, some of the contributions are not much. You contribute 500 shillings, 1,000 shillings, but you have to play your part. So you have your stake there. You have your stake in the monies that you're talking about. So it's not just free money that you're getting and you utilize whatever you want to do. You have to contribute. And as AECF, as we partner, as they give us the funding, we also have to contribute from our end. And now as we deal with the individuals, they also have to contribute to their end at their level. So one of the ways that we need to do, we need accountability and people to take responsibility at their level. And of course, long-time horizon. The funding may be within a period, let's say 1 year, 2 years, but how can we be able to have the funding, the project or the venture be sustainable for a long time? So the funding here does what he has just told us, the heavy lifting. What are some of the things that we can be able to accelerate as we begin, and then with time, we can be able to sustain apart from the donor. The donor doesn't have to be there throughout, but we can be able to sustain it. And also training. We're getting individuals, getting organizations, getting the funding. We need to enhance the training so that they can be able to manage. Is it a business that they have opened? Like the partnership that we are doing with ACF in Turkana, there are people who have very small shops, very small kiosks, but they need training on simple financial management. Do they keep records? How do they keep records? What do they do? Because out here you find that someone is not even conversant with the difference between sales and profit. So whatever they have sold, for them this is profit. So we have to continually train them. So there are quite a number of things, but lastly, which I had mentioned before, context. She mentioned understanding the person. Context. Some of them are the people that we deal with in Turkana, the people that we deal also in the Lake region. Some of them are not literate. So how do we explain funding to an illiterate person? How do you explain it to someone who is not conversant with tech? So we have to go down to their level for it to be sustainable at the time that we live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. How can we help them in their context, and how can we support them to have regular income? And this income has certainly impact the way they live, and also people who depend on them, impacts children going to school. So these are just not numbers. There are actually stories behind these numbers. So thank you for that round, and audience, both in person. We also have people who are streaming in YouTube. Feel free to prepare your questions, because after this segment, I will be picking some of your questions to the panelists, questions and contributions. Now, moving on, I found very interesting statistics. This study was done through Convergence, that only 1.1% of global private investment is actually linked to blended structures in terms of private sector engagement, 1.1%. Now, that said, there are certain implementation models that have been seen to work. Some of them include the Challenge Fund model and results-based financing. Anchor farm models, where we have large farms that act as platforms for SME inclusion. These farms have actually, in certain instances, helped to scale rural engagements and digital distribution networks. We have digital delivery systems with the digital infrastructure, which has led to cutting costs and enabled to scale, think mobile money platforms. Think of Kenyan situations like M-Pesa that would really revolutionize how our finances is received. However, we have a few challenges to private sector engagement, such as short project cycles, which sometimes limit the private sector's ability to commit to long-term capital, sometimes fragmentation across development work, a lack of co-creation, and this really has come out in our first engagement. So as we look ahead in this conversation, this is an opportunity to explore which implementation strategies or even partnerships do we need to pivot in order to catalyze private sector engagement. But we also have to ask the hard questions. What are some of the legacy system or even assumptions that we need to let go of? But also, this also presents an opportunity. So what are the emerging opportunities? Perhaps rooted in local innovation, perhaps digital tools, or even new incentive models should we carry forward or scale? Now, this leads me to go back to Victoria again. Given AECF's role as the largest blended finance and challenge fund manager, what lessons has AECF learned, especially operating in high fragile context where even the understanding of risk would be different, yet AECF has stepped boldly in some of these spaces? What have we learned, and how can development partners better structure in incentives to better attract catalytic capital?
Thank you. And of course, I'm very happy for us to own the largest challenge fund globally, but definitely not happy to own the blended finance one. I think they are proper big boys there. But we indeed are actually the longest running and largest challenge fund, just for purposes of surfacing our early stage businesses to be able to get them on go further on the continuum of finance. I think I want to just pivot your question a bit, and for the reason that, today we are really talking about, there is such, grand development challenges that we are staring at across the continent. Fragility is increasing. Much more people are, falling behind the poverty line. Governments are deprioritizing some sectors because of, other pressing needs, recurrent expenditure, and all of that. And what do we do indeed? And what structures, as you put it, are going to help us going forward? And really, I think from a learning perspective, being a pipeline builder, there isn't sufficient local structures that support access to capital by private sector players. So I find that if there's a gift that could be offered, it would be for functioning capital markets. I'm sure FSD Africa is in the room, and I am such a fan of their work on just looking at how do you get to build structures that mobilize local capital, and this local capital gets to be available for the micro entrepreneur, for the small entrepreneur, for the medium entrepreneur, for the large entrepreneur, because the capital that is coming from the bigger global institutions and the larger investors are going to be in a currency that may not be, fit for purpose for the business that is getting its revenues in the local currencies. So the local capital markets must be structured to really mobilize local capital, and that capital to be made accessible in an affordable manner to the local businesses. It doesn't matter how much of businesses we get to ready if they are going to be so far off from the already existing vehicles, whether it is blended structures within the development finance institution on commercial banks. There is need to be this in between here, vehicles that they can be able to tap into that have the terms and conditions that are appropriate for their level. So let's build local capital markets to support local businesses. I think blended finance structures have been spoken about many institutions push this, and development finance institutions continue to blend public capital and private capital in order for them to extend their portfolios to businesses that otherwise would be deemed risky, whether it is within the agri sector where we operate, or clean energy companies where, a lot of funders could still be seeking to understand, and be able to make better decisions around how to lend. And this enables them to take the risk. So resolve for viability gap funding. So that's why it is important. And of course, we argue this because it is what we do. And oftentimes we focus more on justifying what we do. I know everyone in the room would do that, and those online as well. Whenever there is public capital that is available, is this public capital being utilized for purposes of mobilizing private capital? Because it is not argued at all that private capital is much more available in the volumes that is needed. It is just that the fiduciary mandate of this private capital is so removed from the risk level of the SMEs that are looking for the capital, and blended finance get to help to bring it to manage the risk levels and be able to incentivize, whether it is the MD, the multilateral development funds or the pension funds, to be able to bring their resources to blend with the public funding. And they are, fast loss structures, guarantee structures, all of those help to actually push for better access and inclusion. I would also think that maybe it's really interesting about structures, because I'm a firm believer that the public, the different governments, that we work with, and we work more closely with governments than before, as AECF, must be able to use the very resources that they have also to incentivize private sector investments, creating enabling environment, PPP structures, right? That is able to, again, mop in, draw in, the private investors. But every structure that we think about must be able to bring everybody along, because there is not a single part. It's not about if private sector only worked, if only government worked. It is that the government must work, the private sector must work, the non-governmental organization sector must work, and then we all are able to bring in the different strengths to be able to solve for how we better mobilize capital into the future. I think also continually thinking about the instruments at work, context to context. We've come from a world where we've been deploying grants. As the AECF, we continue to do that. We do results-based financing. We are now doing debt, right? But it is really just acknowledging that as in you will go into Sudan, and it may be very difficult at that particular point for a private sector enterprise to be able to service a facility at a particular level of interest. But in a market like Kenya, where a sector has already really developed, there is possibly just a need to rethink about why are you giving a grant? Is it truly for what Isaac said, bring forward the development impact by 6 years, get to solve for access to opportunity for more people. But if you cannot see that benefit, then grant is not really the instrument to offer. So we must continually challenge ourselves when we think about future structures on instruments and when to deploy grant and when to deploy loans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have to build local capital, rethinking our instruments, and even it's interesting that you bring up the point of how much public capital would be used then to incentivize or even mobilize private capital. Let me come to Elena again, and this question is twofold. When we think about partnerships, what models have proven most effective in aligning private sector capabilities from your engagement in public-private partnerships? And where do you see as the greatest opportunity for reinvention?
Thank you so much. And I've been listening very carefully to Victoria, and I have to agree with everything she has said, you know, from lead and finance to localization and how we make these things work where they need to work. And I think from the side of UNICEF, we have had several successful collaborations with the private sector, because the private sector is really growing within the organization and how we collaborate over the past 10, 15 years. And the focus has been really on developing, adapting, and scaling the products that serve the most vulnerable populations. And of course, for us, we focus on children and youth and especially women and girls. And we have basically worked with manufacturers and innovators to create more affordable and child-friendly solutions. You know, for example, you know, probably our work around the vaccines. So we're working around nutrition supplements for the children, right? Whether that be like in very humanitarian context or more development ones. And then we work on education technologies and really with a mindset to really ensure that last mile delivery, you know, and not leaving any child behind. That's like, you know, one child left behind is one child too many. And I think that maybe I can give a few examples of where that kind of has proven to be effective. Grouping it around maybe some key areas that we have highlighted, and Victoria has touched upon some of them. First of all, shared value partnerships. We really cannot do this if we don't see the common vision and if we don't align commercial and child outcomes. And there, one concrete example, for example, in South Africa, we have been working with BMW, focused on STEM skills and really linking the corporate workforce needs. So what are their needs with youth and empowerment and job shadowing programs. And we're working, for example, also with the MasterCard Foundation to look at the youth skilling, but really matching that with the market needs, with the local market needs. Victoria has mentioned blended finance and de-risking. I think that's key, and unlocking capital for high risk and high impact areas as well. And in this area, maybe I can bring an example of Uganda, where we have worked with the private sector and public sector to co-invest in oxygen infrastructure. Where you really have the private capital that has complemented the investments from the public sector to close the critical health system gaps. And that's really at the different level of Uganda. I was just in Uganda last week, actually, and seeing some of this work and how critical it is, not only for local population, but also, as you know, we have a lot of refugees in Uganda. So how do you integrate and how do you provide services even for that population? And the third, I think, area is really we need to kind of, what we have seen that works is to anchor like really strong investments within local ecosystem models, and to enable SMEs and community actors to go to scale. And I have mentioned in my opening remarks on the first question you have asked, I have mentioned the RWASH model, which really anchors around local women managing water systems, supported by partners like KfW, and we of course want to see even private sector there, that is providing sustainability over a decade. This is where we want to build those communities so that there can be self-sustained in the long term. So you asked, what is the greatest opportunity? I think it is really linking these models. Blended finance for scale, local anchors for sustainability. We cannot be doing any of this without engagement of local communities, and shared value for the alignment. I think, so doing more with less, I would say becomes doing better with less. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We need to link these models at scale. Isaiah, you are already expanding access to water and sanitation through tech-enabled last-mile delivery in underserved communities. So what models have helped Lift Kenya to expand this access? And where have traditional models fallen short? And again, where do we have any opportunities for reinvention in how we engage?
Thank you. One key thing that we actually realize is that we are not just a business for the communities that we serve. We are neighbors, we are friends, we are fathers, your parents, operating within the communities that we serve. And the reason why that is very key is, and I'll give an example. During one of the previous political skirmishes where there were demonstrations around the country, we literally found, because our facility is not far from the main road, we had a team of about 20 self-mobilized youth who literally came to provide security to our facilities because they didn't want it to be vandalized, and that's deep in the heart of Kakuma town, right? And that kind of I thought I was running a business, but I realized I'm just a neighbor. I'm also a neighbor. I'm friends with these people, and it just transcends that aspect of just saying, oh yeah, we are providing these services to the local communities, and while we thought we were doing an affordable product to people who probably would otherwise be outpriced. We realize the value that we give to the community is way more than just the commercial transactions that we have with them. So our ability, the fact that we exist within the community that we serve, and we've been very lucky to be able to quote unquote pioneer a light manufacturing enterprise in that area. It means that we've been able to cut down the lengthy supply chain costs that would otherwise, result in a very high consumer price product. If we were probably based in Nairobi, we would have like a couple of authorized distributors who then sell to wholesalers, who then sell to retailers, and who would sell to the eventual consumer. And at every point of supply chain, you definitely want to, this is definitely going to be a markup. And that means that the eventual price at which the consumer is accessing your good, which is manufactured at a low cost, is quite high, and that outprices a lot of people. So that ability of actually having an enterprise within the community, being able to do a direct-to-consumer delivery model, I think has been very key. We have our own company-owned shop within the communities that we serve, and that helps us to be in touch with the eventual consumer of our goods, as well as partnering with over 500 shops within Kakuma town and the refugee camp. And I think, again, that core identity that we are not just a business, I think has been very, very key, that transcends any other form of delivery system that would otherwise be utilized by a conventional business that's just selling the services there. And I think for us, we've gotten to a point, and again, that has also built so much trust. Sometimes you find being able to earn some form of trust with the people that you work with is also extremely key. For those in the financial analysis, would be keen to say that we are a big businesses. We are a big business operating with these people right now, and our cash conversion cycle is negative. Rarely do you find that in such an area where so many businesses are struggling, say, with debt collections. And we've just been able to leverage on the trust that we have with the businesses that we work with and the individuals that we work with. Someone just comes and says, "Oh, this is an amount of money. I need you to prepare for me 1,000 cartons of water, and I'm gonna come for these. I'm gonna slowly by slowly come to collect this water over the next 2 weeks or so." And so we find, again, sitting on quote unquote an escrow account, money that we haven't earned, just because again the communities have entrusted us with their resources, because they can come again and see, these are the guys who deliver this product. This is where they are. If anything happens, I know where to find them. And I think that has given us a very, very quote unquote unique business miracle that we are not a bank, but we also keep some money on behalf of our customers, and they don't come for money, they come for products 2-3 weeks after they've given us the money. And this has helped us to accelerate our delivery systems, which is a bit more efficient than we could have been if we are sitting on a lot of receivables, say, in our books and things like that. And so, again, that's a very key aspect that we've experienced.
Sure, and just out of interest, why water?
So water is, so to say, life, right? Shouldn't probably say this is 70% of bodies is water, only that it's crystallized, right? And you need water to, function. And at such a place, which is 800 kilometers north of Nairobi, there's no better product to offer to the community than water. And of course, we've transcended with our core main product was water. We now, of course, realize that we can also grow into a bigger consumer goods business. But the reason why water is key, water is just not water. If you look at the WHO standards for clean drinking water or safe drinking water, you realize that the parameters, the quality of water that majority of people consume, say in that area, is quote unquote not considered safe for human consumption, right? And so we've again been able to profitably reduce the access to safe drinking water to so many people. We've, again, from the support that we got from AECF, we were able to acquire some of the machines that would allow us to manufacture these huge reusable bottles that then we would give the communities, and then with those bottles, then the communities are able to come and purchase what. So we don't sell the bottles. We give the bottles, and because they've trusted us again, they only come to purchase water for us. From us, and again, it's again a very, we found ourselves again in the midst of like a business miracle happening, in that we've been able to exist in such an environment for a couple of years now, and we've grown to currently, I think we are the biggest bottler of water and growing into other products in the whole of refugee camp. In the whole of Turkana County, serving both the refugees and the host community.
Well done. It's not just a business, but neighbors, friends, fathers, and building trust within the communities, but also challenging us to exist where the communities are, tech development where they are, and also cutting down lengthy supply chain costing that would affect pricing. Now coming to, from a SACCO perspective, so in this ecosystem, how can partners and policymakers more intentionally engage SACCOs? Eric.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to hear the story that that is being spoken here. The people that he's working with, these are some of the people that would be our members, where they can have a bank, sort of a bank. We call them a bank. They can have a bank where they can be able to just manage their funds even as they deal with his organization. These are the people that we are looking at. When I talk to funders, to development partners, to people who contribute funds, one of the things that I say is that the impact that these funds are doing on ground, you cannot actually explain in a forum like this. Because sometimes we are in Nairobi, and the things that surround us, we get surrounded by these things until it becomes normal. But then when we get out of this, would I say a bubble or something, we go out there and realize the life that people are living. The impact of the monies that are provided really does a lot. So for us, we are very happy when we partnered with the AECF, and the impact that it has done to individuals there. I'm just giving the background so that we can see. We don't talk. We're not just here to just explain, but we are here to inform you of the lives that have changed. There are children who would not have gone to school, literally to school, were it not of the funding, AECF, Victoria, and the others. So currently we've disbursed over 170 million. It's about $1.4 million. You can imagine the ripple effect in that community. Someone has a shop. They get the shop, the funds that they're getting from the shop, they can be able to buy other things. There are people who now are able to access the items that we are getting here. The money goes to someone else who does other things. So quite a ripple effect. Over 5,600 households have been directly assisted. 5,600, quite big. In Kenya, one household normally has averagely around 7 or 8 people. So you assist one person, you're thinking you're assisting one person, you're basically assisting like 8 people. There are children that will remain in school just because they've got a home they can go to and they eat, they are stable, they can do their homework at night. So apart from the shop which we can be able to see, there are so many things we cannot be able to see in the back end of the impact of these funds. So it is never in vain. Even that 1,000 shillings in Kenya has really a lot that can be done. In terms of what is it that they need to know, or what is it that they can be able to do? Of course, more funds so that we can be able to impact more. There's something Victoria said that we are doing with the blue economy, and we were on the ground the other day, and the stories that we heard from the ground, the fact that like in let's say the western part of Kenya, it's interesting, it's mostly the men who fish, who go to the lake to fish, but it's the women who are mostly selling the fish. It's men mostly who get benefit. So we have women here who do a lot also, but they're not able to benefit from the farming, the fish farming. So this funding will be able to help the women. Women are exploited when they do not have economic power. So some of these things can be helped by this funding, and we have these projects. We can also help the women, and the women, when they're empowered, they will help their families. Children will go to school quite a lot. We'll reduce sexual exploitation. So we need more. If we can be able to get more funds and we can be able to push it to the people, that will be good. Also, when we system setup, sometimes we get the funding. It requires certain system for it to run efficiently. So just apart from funding that we can on lend to people, there are systems that are required. What system are we using? Basic systems, some of them Excel, some of them are customized small ERP to sort it out. Sometimes we would need the personnel. We start a project probably in Nyanza there or in Malindi at the coast. Would require personnel. This personnel would require training. Would require even audits. And we've heard of stories of funding that has come to Kenya, and we cannot account for the projects that we have done. So we will also require mechanism where we can be able to audit and to ensure that the project achieves and undertakes the projects that we have. Sometimes we deal with these businesses, and they are required to comply with certain requirements for the government. Yes, you want to support this person to open a business, but they require a license. There are things that they require that probably are no funding. So how are we able to assist these people? Who are the people who have an idea, they can be able to set up their business. Apart from the funds to run the business, they can be able to set up structures, they can be able to get their licenses, just the statutory requirements. And sometimes it takes longer period to settle. And I think it has been said, longer period to settle. So by the time this person sets up the business, starts, if it's repaying the funds or it's starting to do a certain number of things, sometimes the period. So, and sometimes the funding is within a very short period, but the projects that they are taking would probably take longer. So by the time they're settling, time they're sorting out, probably the support has ended. So, and the training also has ended. So sometimes we would need even the training, part of the funding, if we can have enough training budget so that it can train both the people who are implementing and also the people who we are implementing the project for. So training, and some of them, like there are people that you've encountered in Turkana, they're not even able to fill a form because the first time we were doing, because we wanted to get their names, we wanted to get their data, just normal KYC that we do. We give them a form, some of them cannot even be able to write. They don't know how to write, they don't know how to read. So some projects we can be able even to do short literacy classes for them, just for them to be able to read and write. So if those things can be included also in the funding, that would be good. So again, because we are a SACCO, which is a financial institution, and we require them to contribute regularly, every month, and also to repay these funds. Sometimes we get them not able to repay due to other reasons, like the business is not doing well, so the default on these particular credit lines. So what is it that the funding can be able to cushion the implementing organization in terms of default from these members? And some of them are defaulting not because of their own making, but because of the circumstances that are there. So in short, it's a lot of impact that is being done, a lot of impact, and it just needs more capacity in terms of the funding and more capacity in terms of training that we'll be able to even just document and write the impact that it is with. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And now it's an opportunity for the audience to ask questions to the panelists. So for the in-person audience, I will request anyone with a question or comment to raise their hand, and we have a few microphones. You introduce yourself, but also mention to whom the question is directed. Anyone with any question, comment? Yes.
I think just before the question,
Sure.
I think I just wanted to bring in context. For many of us who work here, we may not understand specifically the Kakuma Kalobei Challenge Fund, which is the initiative that is being referenced to by both Kenya Bankers and Lifter. And it is actually a mutual fund model that is supported by KfW, supported by the UK government, the Swiss government as well, and really looking at the possibilities of when private capital is capitalized to solve for development challenges in displaced settings. And the challenge that we were seeking to solve together with the IFC is how to attract a bigger private sector that can be able to provide products and services and replace humanitarian interventions that already were no longer relevant for the level of the economic activity that was happening in Kakuma and Kalobei. And this is really as we think about development today, and the fact that we no longer have as much resources coming through to support the refugee crisis, to support the rising poverty levels, it is that there is need for that which is being done through humanitarian effort that could be done through private capital to be done through private capital, so that indeed the resources that must be made available for active crises, resources that must be made available for humanitarian crises is secured and ring-fenced for that. And we allow for private businesses to come in and complement the work that is being done, and at the right time. Because when you delay the coming in of private capital into a conflict-affected setting, for example, you create a dependency on aid. And once you create a dependency for aid, ask us who have been in Somalia, Sudan, Burkina, wherever, you will find that people would rather aid anytime. Reason being that they understand it as free, and I don't have to work too hard for it. But the moment you pivot that to it's essential, it's critical. Let us use it for that. And then you say, but these same communities are looking for sustainable income. They are looking to really change how they are accessing and using the resources that is right available to them. And the private sector that is able to come and look at Lake Turkana, for example, and say that, but there is so much of fish here that can be able to actually be fished, transported with good cooling technologies in place to other markets across the country. And then increased incomes is realized because we have found another type of a customer that is willing to pay a better price because we've opened, the markets through very intentional interventions of bringing the private sector. I think the other thing really very quickly is the importance that we've seen of thinking of a system approach that gets to solve for build, a capability at the community level so that they know they can have the right, they have the boats, they have the know-how for purposes of breeding the fish and farming the fish and harvesting the fish. And then you build a private sector that really gets to play at put the cooling infrastructure, right near the shore, build out cold chain mechanisms that get to move into the cold storage that is available in a bigger market, and then thereafter there is nothing that stops those goods from moving. So you have to think the entirety of the chain and not just say let's increase productivity at the lake, or let's bring cooling facilities. You could have cooling facilities and you don't have enough fish anyway to be able to take on the capacity. And when the private comes with their know-how, then there is more retained value at the community, and it means this community is able to be economically engaged as opposed to them going to queue waiting for really food to be handed to them.
Thank you so much. That context is helpful. To our first question.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Emma Sanchez, working for the Group French Development Agency, representing both Proparco, our private sector subsidiary, and the AFD, our public sector mother company. So this gives me both legs, one on the private sector kind of financing and one on the public sector financing. So I have two questions for the panel, if I may. The first one is related to blending and de-risking mechanism. So even though we all acknowledge the importance of blending and de-risking in the private sector to enable more investment in specific contexts, how do you reflect on the fact that some contexts, if too much blending arrives, might have a distortion of the current existing market system? I'm not including the fragile areas and fragile contexts in this question. Like, I would not dare to suggest to have an understanding of a market system that's not needing blending finance, for example, in Turkana. So first question, risk appetite might be diminished by the increase of blended finance and de-risking. And the other one would be maybe related to the German head of corporation introduction earlier, where we, as development actors and corporation actors, a lot of knowledge have been won on how to have the best practice in the development world. Not saying that it's perfect, far from it, but a lot of knowledge has been created. Conflict sensitivity, climate resilience, human rights among them. How do you make sure, when you rely more and more in the private sector, that those important items are also embedded in the programs that are channeled with private sector money? Maybe this is $1 million question, but if anyone has some insights and reflects on ongoing work, I'm very happy to hear about it.
Thank you. Could I pick two more? Yes, please go ahead.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much. Boniface Odhiambo from International Rescue Committee, IRC. So looking at the opening statement from Victoria earlier, I think the first statement that you said that I felt really connected to was about as you're thinking about private sector and thinking about even the blended financing and the models, look at the beneficiary, in the mind. So within the humanitarian sector, you know, for Kakuma, which is one of the largest refugee hosting, and also have the host communities, can you maybe reflect and also share with us about the enabling environment, the policy ecosystem? How is that also creating attractive, you know, environment for the private sector, looking at, for example, the refugee camp setting, the regulations, you know, the policies we have in place, just to see that those who will be interested to come up or even add or even invest or start the activities, looking at the refugee environment and the laws in the country. How is that enabling the private sector and attractive to them to be interested, maybe to venture and invest? Thank you.
One more? Yes. Okay, we actually have two, and then we'll take that round first.
Thank you very much. My name is Bola J from UNDP, Resilience Hub for Africa. Thanks so much for inviting us to this conversation. My two questions are directed to Victoria. The first one is basically to state that we just recently started a process of putting together an impact fund for resilience in Somalia. And the way this fund is structured is that we are going to be working with a private sector fund manager, and UNDP is going to be focused on ensuring that SDG impact is prioritized in mobilizing the resources from the private fund manager, but also ensuring that we do a good market assessment to enable them to target what we call the missing middle. Those are usually like medium enterprises, but also could be some small enterprises, not big enough to get money from the formal financial sector, but not too small to the extent that they don't have the KYC and other basic documentation to take loans. The first question, therefore, is, do you have similar models in Kenya that we can learn from, and we can look at some of the successes you have recorded and then use that to inform the work we are doing in Somalia? The second question is on the issue of scaling. That has been implied but has not been quite explicit among the panelists. And we have done quite a bit of work in the last few years in counties like West Pokot and in places like Wajir. From those experiences, we feel it's important to think of scaling from the beginning. And often, most of us in the development world, we don't pay enough attention to this. I would like to be curious to see, in your experience, what does scaling mean? Because for us, it means, for example, the donor is able to exit. It means that the businesses you support are able to support other businesses to create a healthy, sustainable ecosystem. It means good practices in terms of human rights and do no harm, as well as government is able to now amend their policies to be able to bring in more private funds into those sectors. And I think this is usually the frustration of traditional donors, because these exit pathways are very difficult to attain, at times because we are not deliberate about them from the beginning. What lessons have you got to share, and how can we do this better? Thank you so much.
We have the last one, yes.
All right, thank you very much, and I think this has been a very useful and engaging discussion, so thanks to the panel. So my name is William Mulehi from Intellecap Advisory, and I guess my question goes to both the enterprise as well as the financiers, is to maybe just to see what role that government plays, especially when it comes to I know a lot of policy and policy influencing, but it would be interesting to hear how both the enterprise works with the local government as well as maybe the national government, and also how the funders would also interact with the government, be it through capacity building or capacity support. And then I think more broadly is to just understand, I know the context is of course Kakuma, but it would be interesting to hear what, especially the development partners, would tackle issues to do with forex, because there are some countries which host a lot of refugees, but there's also the challenge of forex, and how do you lend now to the local companies in a currency which they would be able to sort of like manage and also to repay. So thanks.
Thank you so much, William. I think I'll start with Victoria. I think there are about 3 questions for you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And sorry, I did not get the names. Really sorry about that. But I will respond to the first question from AFD around blending and de-risking and the risk of distortion. It's interesting you say that, and I will be very open to say that it is a question that we have to answer as the AECF many times. Interesting, though, that I can say that it's been lesser over the last 2 years, and I don't know whether it is because our portfolio has shifted more towards a fragile context, so someone cannot tell you, why are you giving money to Somali businesses? Because they know they are not giving money to Somali businesses half of the time. But I will answer it this way, that what is really critical is to look intently at the principle of additionality. Is the blending, is the blended finance going indeed to attend to that which commercial capital cannot attend to? Which means that you can determine that the risk level of the particular model of that particular country, of that particular geography, is not one that will match the fiduciary accountability and the mandate of commercial capital. And that, in bringing in the concessional capital, you are, in another period of time, going to unlock commercial capital to be able to flow in and sustain whatever indeed was being supported and de-risked at the time. We argue at the AECF that we do not distort markets. We level the playing field. It means that we are giving opportunity to enterprises that are truly gems that are poised for greatness, but for the reason of they are indigenous, they are early stage, they are testing something, they are pivoting. The established financiers that are looking for traditional rates of return are unwilling to consider them as a portfolio company. Ours is a demonstration effect. It is to prove that you can be able to actually fund a business. The other thing also about blended capital is that provided it is also solving for, building the readiness of companies for then again accessing the commercial capital. So it comes in with other de-risk mechanisms, technical advisory support, credit enhancement mechanisms. Building the capacity of businesses. We work with so many businesses at the AECF, and people underestimate the work that it takes to be able to get a business to balance human capital, growth strategy, marketing, supply chain, fundraising, all of them together. You will find an owner who is very happily keeping on with an accountant at 500,000 turnover, 1 million turnover. And then they meet an investor, and the investor is like, I need to know your capital stack and how you're thinking about it. Are you thinking equity and debt and what mix? And they can't answer that question. They need a CFO level, but they can't afford a CFO. Often I've seen that blended structures come with the understanding and appreciation already that technical advisory support and architecture that works for the SME is necessary. So it comes in to be able to build these businesses. So I think that, however, I really encourage funders that indeed challenge your executors, your agencies, your implementers, to assure you that they are not just throwing capital to grant chasers and businesses that want to take advantage of the availability of development money for purposes of growth. A few years ago, we did an independent evaluation by Ecoris, and it was determined that 66% of our funding was fully additional, and 20% of our capital was partially additional. It follows, therefore, that only about 14% of our capital was challenged as far as whether it actually was additional and whether commercial capital should really have been the capital that was. So it was 14% was not additional. Let me answer the other question relating to reliance on the private sector and how we embed the other things that are really important on ESG metrics that you speak to. For the reason that our capital as the AECF comes 100%, mostly, or most of it, from the public sector, matters, conflict sensitivity, human rights, gender inclusion, are a principal part. So we have a huge part of our work that does what we call the ESMS, the Environmental Social Management System. It was actually supported by KfW many years ago. We do proper mapping of our portfolio to see which of the businesses present particular social and environmental risks. And we get to have environmental social action plans for different businesses depending on category. So what I have actually noted is that most of those that invest for impact will oftentimes demand for us as intermediaries to flow down, conditions relating to ESG to the private sector companies. And in fact, we have found businesses. One time in Mozambique, one just said, hey, you know what? You are giving me money. You are bringing in all of these conditions. Thank you very much. I will go to the commercial bank. It's like, it's burdensome to comply. So we would rather go and just work, focus. We don't have this much time to work around reporting on the social and governance issues. But for us, we can't trade that off because it is a core part of the funding that we receive. Now let me go to the question from UNDP. My other panelists will speak to the others. I think one of the things, sorry, good thing you asked about lessons in Kenya. So we work across the region, and Somalia is actually one of our countries. I think really one key lesson for us is, and I'm really glad to hear that you're saying you are going to be working with a fund manager. I just really know, and we know as a team, that building a muscle that relates to asset management when you have not been an asset manager does not take a week, nor a month, nor a year. It takes time. So working with an asset manager and a fund manager who understands the market, understand the types of the businesses. Are you doing debt, equity? What are you doing? Which instruments? Debt and grants. Yeah. Which I think really you already have everything that you need. You've done a market assessment, which means you understand the market, you know the businesses that are existing, you know the instruments at work. Because of matters, rule of law and all of that, collateral enforcement is a challenge, but you can be able to get through it. Scaling, and we can have a side conversation on this one, but scaling for us. So we have 4 principles that we look at anytime we are looking at a business at the AECF, and it is potential for scale, commercial viability, how innovative it is, and then additionality. And scale for us just means that we must be confident that in us providing the capital, the patient capital initially, soon enough it will be sustained through. So we must see the pathway to scale. We must see you in another 10 years completely changing how things work within the community that you've set up as a business. So sustained by commercial capital. Thank you. I will stop there.
Thank you so much. Let me invite Eric. What role does the government play in policy? I think this was a question by William.
Okay. Thank you. What role does the government play? Government. I wish it would do more, but what we do first, we engage with government continuously through. For us as a circle, we have a regulator. We engage with them, and occasionally there are things that the regulator does not understand, but we are able to push through the regulator because we are on the ground and we know the challenges that are associated on the ground. So we are able to engage with them. At times they listen, at times they say this is the regulations and you have to follow. So we constantly engage. With the regulator, we've got the relationship manager, so who we engage continuously. So at project level, we also have the county government, where there are people involved in regulations, and there are people involved in follow-up of such activities. There are people involved in licensing of business. There are people involved in just administration and seeing the impact that it has. So we continuously engage. Do we always get what we want? Definitely no. But do we get zero? No. There are things that they are able to explain to them what it does. It becomes a bit easier, especially the impact where the impact is where the impact is on a large population, because again it becomes political, so mileage for them, so they are able to embrace it. So just to add on to the scalability, for a SACCO, it has structures to enable people to continue. With the AECF funding in Turkana, we are funding enterprises, and the enterprises have to have a going concern, and for them to be able to continue even without funding for future. And also, these people, they are also becoming part of the SACCO ecosystem, and which I explained how the SACCO works. So even apart from their businesses that they are undertaking that was supported with the funding, they are now members of the SACCO that save regularly, they will borrow, and they will be able to do bigger things rather than just the amount that was lent to them to start a business. They're able to do more than that, and they'll be able to be members of the SACCO for a long time. So that would be role of government and the scalability. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Isaiah, there was a question around enabling environment and a policy ecosystem for private sector. What would be your response with regard to you're already investing? Is the environment already, open for private sector engagement?
I 100%. Again, because every environment that we exist in is always going to be a business that's trying to first of all solve the problems that particular community is facing, and hopefully by doing that make a profit, which is an incentive to continue offering products and services. So I think the biggest challenge is just the fact that traditionally we have situations where, and this is, I think this is just an inherent human bias. You understand things based on who you are as opposed to how things are. The moment you exist in a different context, you actually realize how ripe such an environment would be for a business to thrive. I say that because I've been in both, quote unquote, both worlds. I've had a business in Nairobi, I've had a job in Nairobi, and I've also run a business in Turkana, and those are two different contexts. The advantage, I mean, and the advantage that I have with that is just actually knowing how, like having, providing a service or a solution through a market route has very fulfilling effects in such areas. I'm saying this because, again, we, like for us, we started as a Of course, I knew previously that 90% of businesses would fail within the first 3 years. So I was obsessed with ensuring that I see my that birthday as a business. And once I got there, then I realized, you know what, I'm in the top 10 percentile, right? And then there's now, of course, the next phase where it's commonly known the shadow of the valley of death, where you also have to hit your 5 years, where you have to figure out, you have to go through different challenges of all of a sudden you've proven your model, you're now working with you're more visible to the regulators, people are coming after you, say the government says, oh, you find yourself as a spotlight to so many people and so many other stakeholders that you didn't deal within the first, say, 3 years of operations, and that's currently what we've almost been able to now maneuver, and just again seeing the business through all of that period and still being able to, run a profitable scaling venture that's still not right now. The current products that we offer, they're not entirely, they're not at all dependent on continuous, say, grant financing, because the business is commercially viable as it is. Perhaps we are now getting to a point where we are more attractive to the conventional lenders of capital, providers of capital, maybe the banks and say the VCs or the Ps, and also trying to move out of that region and see, can a business be born in Turkana and establish operations outside of the North Rift region, which is currently our next challenge. And so again, just the ability of being in that context and actually seeing, yes, it's possible to be able to exist in such an environment. I think that's been very key. I think I would probably want to also touch a little bit about a question that was asked, I think, by I think a certain lady from Propaco. So one thing that's also very key, even as an investee and as a business owner, sitting in front of financiers and potential capital lenders is, of course, any business has a balance sheet. You don't go and find a business that's selling eggs and their vision is to sell chicken meat and directly straight on fund onto them the chicken meat product. That business is just going to fall. If just like scaling from eggs to hatchery, and then from hatchery to growing the chicken, and then eventually to literally funding their chicken meat business, I think that's a part. Because again, in Africa, I am of the school of thought that we don't need a unicorn in Africa. We don't need to be so obsessed with building $1 billion business in Africa. We need to probably build $1,000 million businesses, and that's a better impact in Africa than just chasing this one huge success, to have this one business that's has the unicorn status. And so the ability of lending based on the balance sheet of that particular business, I think, is very, very key. So then you're also not coming with this heavy capital that you've raised from the different partners that you have, and then you see someone running a 50 million balance sheet and give them 200 million shillings. It's just they are going to they will make, if you give them 200 million, they will make 198 million mistakes and probably only deploy 2 million shillings. So being able to grow with someone from each stage that they are in, I think, is also very key in ensuring that you're able to help them scale their businesses and their operations. Because again, we won't need a rocket launch. You'd probably need longer runways as opposed to being able to take off vertically, just because, again, you have to interact with very unique challenges even as you grow.
Right, thank you very much. Our time is well spent. And anyone with such a burning comment or question, just one person. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, We have one, and then we'll end it at that. And then next opportunity, I'll have our panelists give just a parting shot, and we'll be done. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So by way of introduction, I'm Kola Tambwe, and I'm an investment officer in the financial sector department at the African Development Bank, and I look at financial sector intermediation, or rather financial intermediation. In fact, just to start, yeah, maybe I'll answer your question about why water. And I actually had a discussion about water a few weeks ago in Ethiopia, and it goes, the best investment that you can make is actually in water, because it will get scarce. Anyway, but that's beside this point. So mine is not a question, but just a comment. And this, I think, I'll probably take, have a bilateral discussion with Victoria. And it's about what you've said with regard to the context. And I feel I'm doing some disservice to the African Development Bank, because I speak from the private sector window, and I primarily look at financial intermediation. And therefore, my partners are mainly banks. I might say, unfortunately, because with banks, you can only meet a certain threshold of the bottom of the pyramid. Having said that, I'll agree with you with regard to the various challenges that multilaterals face, and this. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. This includes currency. I mean, our biggest challenge at the African Development Bank is really deploying local currency into markets. And the reason is that, we are stronger in lending hard currencies because of the fact that we don't hold local currencies. So each time that we do, we have attempted to lend in local currencies, is where we have to go to the market, raise a bond, and then pass on those proceeds on a back-to-back basis to a bank that could actually lend. And that usually proves expensive and therefore not deployable. And something else that you said was with regard to pricing. I mean, this also goes on the back of what I've just said with regard to raising local currency. But also, we are a bit challenged in reaching the very bottom of the pyramid, because at the end of the day, we are markets and risk lenders. And therefore, our pricing, when it's not blended, it's not very competitive when it comes to, not looking at the tier 1, tier 2 banks. And lastly is the solutions that we have at the FDB. Taking cognizance of these challenges that we're facing, and where we want the financial sector development department to go is trying to respond. I'm doing this very quickly, but we do have various challenges, and I'd like to discuss them with you bilaterally. Is the funds that we're trying to establish, or the funds that we have established, to respond to the bottlenecks that we have. And most interestingly is what we're trying to work with the government of Kenya, is the establishment of the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank, where the idea is really to deploy funds to VCs, PEs, social impact funds that actually work with players in the bottom of the pyramid to produce blended structures that would capacitate, and not just capacity, but scale companies that lie at the bottom to basically fill the gaps that we are unable to fill with the conventional products that we have. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I appreciate your input. So finally, parting shots. I'll start with Eric here, then to Isaiah, and then Victoria.
Okay. First, grateful for the opportunity to just explain what the funding has done, both to the SACCO and to the people that the SACCO has reached to. So we have sincere gratitude to ACF team and the funding, the funders. We are grateful. I think there's something that I didn't mention. The SACCO, when we now on land, it's very affordable credit. It's not like conventional banks. Very, very affordable credit, single digits. And lastly, we all can if all of us are members of the SACCO, we will be indirectly assisting the marginalized as we also assist ourselves. So today is not the day of SACCO to explain many things about the SACCO. But if you want to understand more about the SACCO, especially Kenya Banker SACCO, you can see me immediately after this. We'll be able to see if you are a development partner, how can you be able to go through the SACCO just as they have done. If you are an individual member, what is it that you can be able to do? Otherwise, we are grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Isaiah?
Thank you. I think for me, just again to be extremely grateful for the opportunities that we found as a business. We've been able to get into a more or less an accelerator program, much like it wasn't like designed as an accelerator program, just because we've been able to again achieve in 4 years what would have organically taken us 10 years to achieve. I think that's very key. It is my hope and desire that such programs and such interventions are availed to such communities as what is such, just because you're always going to find a couple of entrepreneurs who are giving those services and providing, just like grinding day in, day out, or just they probably need a hand. They just like probably to understand better how their businesses are, and just to also get linkages to capital that otherwise they wouldn't get. And I think it's very useful what AECF is doing, but also to say there's never going to be a one solution fits all. There's always going to be opportunities for businesses, for humanitarian sector, for hybrid interventions, and as long as we continue working, hand in hand and designing and co-designing these interventions, I think the world is going to be a better place for everyone, because we all of us want to ensure that we leave our world a better place going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
I just want to be sure we are not leaving out yellow. Great, thank you. Every one of us who is in this room today is in this room because of privilege. Every one of us who is in this room today does not have to think about what they are going to have for food, whether it is for lunch or for dinner. You also do not have to think possibly about how your children will access an education. You also may not truly, I know this, have to go home tonight and have to wonder if you are going to use the direct fire or the very little lantern to light your home. All of that has already been solved for you, and there are different platforms that have been offered to you to be able to access the privilege that you have, irrespective of our paths. Let's remember that the cut in ODA, which is coming to almost 25 to 35%, has a real direct and painful impact, especially for the rural and marginalized. So when we think about possibilities for the future, we must just reimagine. When all this started happening, whether it is USAID or the other governments repurposing their funding for defense and internal priorities and all of that, I remember the first thing that came to mind to me was, what is it that our governments in Africa are doing to really assure that our rural communities, our peri-urban poor, our low-income households are not so dependent on that which is coming from outside. And so for me, I think really, even as we think private sector, I know for sure that there is need for the public good sector to really be sorted by there being sufficient investments that solve for access to health, access to education, so that the private sector does not have to solve for that which the public can solve for. I champion truly for any initiative that will get to mobilize capital at scale. So for any of us, whatever challenge I'm throwing to you is, what you will be doing tomorrow. Ask yourself the question, is this going to support the mobilization of capital at a scale that will be equivalent or near equivalent to the challenges that Sub-Saharan Africa is having to contend with today? And lastly is we breathe the private sector at the AECF. When you think about the private sector, let us think about the early stage and the growing business that just for the reason of their stage and that they are in Africa, they hardly can be in the presence of a proper financier, and that oftentimes really they are banking on ourselves who are in the private sector development space to be able to think of innovations and models that would be able to work for them, so that they then start speaking from the other side of a skilled business. But our work is really to build as many businesses as can. I really like what Isaiah is saying, that Africa may not be really there. Let's find the unicorns. We may not need the Amazons and the Facebooks, and we just need that million businesses that will be turning over $1 million, and our communities will be transformed. Yelena said something that I'm carrying with me today, and I hope that we all carry with ourselves, that one child left behind is one too many. And I'll say, one African left behind is one too many. We work in Africa for Africa. Let's do that, and our future generations will be better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and what a way to end our panel discussion. I'll be handing this back to Charlotte, but as I do that, I request the panelists to just step here for a group photo as Charlotte comes over to take the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. You can give them a better clap. A better clap, please. Those were mic drop moments, lots of gems. Francis, don't you have some gifts to give away? Another round of applause, please. Those were powerful conversations, don't you agree? Don't you agree? Mic drop moments, lots of gems. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that my notebook is full, and so is my head. I mean, in the best way possible, because what I take away with me are tangible things and tangible solutions for us to go and implement. And the real hero here today are the funders who believe in the AECF. We just an implementer. The real hero here is the KfW, who continues to invest in the possibilities that we have within Africa. A round of applause, please, for the KfW. And next on stage, I'd like to welcome an international development expert who has a specialty in conflict and fragility settings. She is a director at the KfW. Over to you, Henrique. A round of applause, please, for her.
No, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the nice words, welcoming words. Thanks a lot for the very rich discussions and also the lively audience with lots of questions. And thanks, Alena, for your questions to spark the conversations. When I do now the wrap-up, I would actually like to take these questions and see if we were able to answer them. Good. So first question was, why is the donor on the stage here? If you're talking about the private sector, why I'm here, why I'm the donor representative? Question, yes. Answer for me, very simple. We need you. You know, we can't do it without the donors, and we still can't do it without the public funding. So total private sector funding, I think we all heard, it's not there yet, yes? And we have with Somalia an example where we had decades of just private sector, and we all know only the elites benefit from it and not the vulnerable persons. We are here about today to advocate and to see how they can be included. So that is the answer I got from the discussions. So second questions, what are the models and how do they work? So we had the Challenge Fund model, and we had two investees, companies Lifter and the Banca Sacco, who benefited from catalytic funding, and we see it can be very successful. And I see everyone who knows Kakuma from, let's say, 6 years ago and goes now to Kakuma sees what, and the Kakuma Calibre Challenge Fund is about $25 million. It's not that much if you compare to the big portfolios we also as KfW have, but it made a difference, yes? And now it looks like a normal town, which it was supposed to be, but 5, 6 years ago it was just a street and some, yeah, whatever, houses, stalls, whatever you would like to call it, and lots of refugees, yes? It has been transformed, actually. So I think, yes, it can work. It has to be thought through, well thought through, but it's a model which we can scale. And we scale it in Sudan, we scale it in Nigeria, you do it across the African continent, yes? So another model is the blended finance model, and we heard from UNICEF, which is actually a UN agency. So how can you say, a hybrid between government and NGOs, but it's definitely public and not private. But they managed to work with companies in Uganda, manufacturers. For sure, it's a highlight, and it might not work like across all countries, but it's a beginning. And we can build on that, we can learn from that to have it in other contexts as well. Then we have the public-private partnerships. We haven't talked about that today that much, but we all know it has its pros and cons, so I leave it as it here. Third question. Is it too simplistic to invest in the private sector to solve development solutions? Answer, for me, definitely yes. It is just too simplistic. And we heard that, yes. We heard it from Jelena, we heard it from you, Victoria, we heard it from Isaiah, and also Eric. So it needs a shared value or shared values between what we would like to achieve as donors, as governments, from the public sphere, and what the private sector would like to have. Is it just, you know, income generation or benefit, profit? But maybe it's also giving back to the community. And I say, you said it very, very nicely, yes? We're not just a business, we are neighbors, we are friends, we are somehow relatives, that also has a sense of responsibility, taking care, leaving no one behind, including them, and thinking how we can include them, but not jeopardizing actually the sustainability. Yes, the profit must be there because otherwise it's not sustainable. And then also co-creation, and I think that's for me the key takeaway for me from these discussions. We can't just say as a public institution, I mean, KfW is not, it's also kind of hybrid, but saying, do it. I mean, no one wants this, yes, just do it. Even if Alena comes from the BMZ side and said, KfW, do it, and then KfW says, no, sorry. Exactly. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like in the private sphere, in the public sphere. So it needs co-creation. Then the fourth question was, what do local solutions mean? And I would say, yeah, co-creation, yes. We don't know how it really looks like. We have some good examples here, but I think it depends on the context, and it needs, yes, co-creation. And that leads me to my final words. How do we find these companies? We had 2 on the stage. We have maybe some in the room, some online. Where do we find these private companies who are ready to come and co-create with us? Because I think that is the biggest challenge. Usually the private companies, they need to take care of their profit. So you find them rarely on the stage here, but rather in their offices or traveling around, and it's very hard to tap and address and get the attention of the CEO, or maybe the CFO or the COO. So that is for me a question I would like to give back. We don't have to answer it today, and I think we will not, but just to think, how do we find them? How do we get their attention? Yes, so with that, thanks a lot. And yeah, I think we can go for lunch. Yes, now it's actually a breakfast. We ordered a breakfast, but it smells like lunch. So thank you.
A round of applause, please. A better hand clap. Danke. Thank you. And there are many other funders in the room that perhaps for one reason or the other, you are not forgotten. I just want you to know we have not forgotten. The Global Affairs Canada, we recognize you and we thank you for your continued support, for believing in Africa's vision, for believing in Africa's potential. CEDAR, we thank you for being present here today. Thank you so much for continuously supporting Africa's potential. And now, we need to pay some bills. For example, I also need to be paid. So we will be doing some evaluation just to check how we have done today. So we'll be having a link right on the screen. Please hold out your phones, scan the QR code, and give us feedback. We'll appreciate where we come from. We believe that feedback is breakfast for champions, and really we want to do and be better. So kindly be generous and leave us some good comments where we could improve on, and also really where we did well. We'll be happy to hear that. I believe you're done. Thank you. Enrique has already invited us to the branch. We can call it branch. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for sparing your time. Thank you for sparing your thoughts. Thank you for sharing with us your insights and the great questions. We've taken note of those, and most definitely we are going to be able to curate and reimagine development finance in a way that we get to do more with less. Asante sana, danke, God bless.